Pacers Nation. You are listening to the Pacers Post-Up, brought to you by the brothers of basketball, Brad and Ryan, a part of the Believe Sports Network, presented by FanDuel. Pacers fans, let's get into it.
All right, Pacers fans, we are back for yet another episode of the Pacers Post-Up. Ryan is back in the saddle as we have hit essentially the halfway mark of Summer League, Ryan. A couple of games now to react to, and frankly, a lot to unpack. We dropped the game yesterday afternoon in Vegas to the Philadelphia 76ers, make an incredible comeback. We were down 20 plus in that game, end up forcing overtime. Didn't score in overtime, didn't really look good in overtime, kind of appeared to run out of gas, if you will. But good to see a fight in terms of the comeback. And again, these games are not about necessarily wins and losses. It's more about talent evaluation. What do these prospects look like? How are things shaping up from a roster construction standpoint? And for us, it's really the focus is on these two-way slots. Because we are sitting here, we don't have our draft pick from last year. Cam Jones was part of that trade for Braden Smith. We don't have a first-round draft pick this year, and we didn't last year. So it's really, we don't have a lot of talent in the stable, right? And you're not watching a Furphy or a Jarris Walker or a Ben Shepherd. I understand Furphy was a second-rounder as well, but there isn't a lot of star power from our standpoint. Now, if you're watching Summer League beyond the Pacers, there certainly is. From Devonta Peterson, Caleb Wilson had I will say a nauseating first game. If you are a Pacers fan, understanding, oh my goodness, if we had gotten that fourth pick, what could have been. But we've got to move on from that. And we're talking about the guys that are in the building here. And frankly, some guys that I think create very interesting debates and conversations around what does this look like, understanding we got the news of Kobe Brown, two-way contract. You've already got Ethan Thompson sort of, I don't want to say slotted, but in the conversation. He's been playing for Puerto Rico in the FIBA World Cup qualifiers. So plenty to unpack. I think, Ryan, I want to get your, because we didn't have a chance to talk over the first couple of games, I want to get your reaction to games 1 and 2, where we stand now a couple of games into Summer League, and then we'll get to some stuff on the back end. But where do you want to start?
I'll start at the place you started last time you went solo, and that is Summer League is sloppy. It is ugly to watch. It's hard to watch at times, and I know the coaching staffs and on both sides are always just trying to get teams in the same momentum, get everybody on the same page, but it is a league of players coming and trying to prove themselves. And as much as the 76ers, who are really aligned on, hey, we're trying to win this thing and that's the goal, and not that every team isn't, but there is this motive of, hey, I want to be the guy, I want to stand out, I want to make my plays, I want to take my shots. I mean, Slawson was a great example of this, took 9 or 10 threes in the first game, which is great. I love to see it because we need to see what that shot looks like. But if he took that in a regular NBA game, everybody would be scratching their heads. So it is an uglier game, even than I think at college, and we are not college guys on this podcast. But with that said, I like what you led into, where we're just trying to see how do these players line up? How do they look? How do they look against higher competition? And let's take Braden Smith, for example. The whole concern is, does he look too small? How does the pace look? How does it change at that feel? And Braden needs to fit in a system. Obviously, that's what he played in Purdue, but you're just trying to get a feel of this. And so the place that I took at least this initial question was, it's ugly to look at, but let's look at the players. Let's see who is standing out, who is that. And every Summer League, I kind of approach it one way. It's if I took a step back from Pacers and did not know who was on this Summer League team, who would stand out? Because the point you just made, if you were watching your team, Devonta stood out, Wilson stood out, even Boozer stood out, so is Peterson. Wagler hasn't stood out yet, really, which is a point to make for Pacer fans. He hasn't looked great. We'll see. Summer League goes on and off, but I'll put it back to you right now. Who has stood out? If you didn't know anything about these players, who would have drawn your eye the most?
To me, it's still Jalen Slawson.
Yes, it is. It is.
And I think the reason I say that, it is the athleticism that jumps off the screen. And for certain guys in Summer League, you can just tell they aren't NBA athletes.
Yep.
And that really shows up on the defensive end. It shows up in the highlight reel dunks. It shows up in the ability to stay in front of guys, rebound, etc. And we got torched on the glass yesterday against Philadelphia. That was a major problem. But you're seeing a guy in Slawson that in the first game, it was the 5 blocks. That was the storyline, and I kind of unpacked that last time around. And not just blocks, highlight reel blocks, spike blocks, like totally coming in, chase downs, those are the things that just jump off the screen at you. You mentioned the shooting. Not great. And in a regular season game, if he's in the game, like you said, can't have it. There's got to be some element of danger to him shooting the ball. And right now it doesn't look that way. He didn't have a great shooting night from outside, at least in game 2, but he was 50% from the floor. A lot of it was around the rim. And not to toot my own horn, but when I was kind of going through that review of game 1, it's like Slawson is a guy that needs to be finishing layups and dunks,
for sure.
Back cuts, getting out in transition, lobs. We've seen a lot of that in game 2, and it's why he goes 50% from the field. He was 6 of 7 from the line. That's not nothing. And the shots hit or miss right now, but I think, to me, I look at guys that, all right, how are they going to translate in an actual NBA game? When the competition gets stiffer, when you're having to switch on different guys, like even in that Philly game yesterday, the 2 guys that were sort of leading the charge there for Philly were LeBaron Philon Jr., who was obviously really strong. I think he had 20 some odd points. And then Johnny Broom, the guy from Auburn. And Slawson's a guy that played on both of them. He gives you the switchability. And so I've been most impressed by him, but I'm not surprised that I'm most impressed by him, because he's somebody that, frankly, I think garners the most attention from a roster spot perspective at this point in time. So I guess I know, Ryan, that I'm probably stealing your thunder a little bit there. Do you have any different take or something to add?
There's no question through 2 games in Summer League that he has been the standout player.
Yeah.
He's the one. I think he had 16 or 18 the first game, 24 last night. He has been impressive. The physicality that you mentioned, the highlight blocks. I actually don't mind him. I didn't want to allude that him shooting a ton of threes is a bad thing. This is the reason to go into it. He was comfortable in the pull-up.
It's a place to do it.
Exactly. And really the goal for him is, can he hit the open 3? He had a couple pull-ups. He had some contested threes that maybe you wouldn't want in the regular season, but right now, see how it falls. But last night, particularly against the 76ers, him attacking closeouts or just open drives, his athleticism was clearly on display. His handle's been a little loose at times, but got a little bit better in the Sixers game. And he has clearly been, if there's one player, take age out of consideration, anything, if you're just, how do I take one guy out of the Summer League and plug them into the Pacers next year, it's Jalen Slawson. There's no question. He's the best defensive player we have on the court, and he's honestly been the best offensive player. There's been some inconsistencies, but much like when Aaron Nesmith, and I'm going to pull one way back, and I'm going to go with him, Taylor Peter, later, but Aaron Nesmith played in our Summer League, so did Shepard. They didn't stand out offensively because they're role player guys, and Jalen's trying to do a little bit more outside of his comfort zone, and at times he's looked good with it, and at times he's looked bad with it, but overall he clearly has the 2 things. Defensively, we know he can play on high-level wings, big switchability that you said. And offensively, his vision's pretty solid. He has a nice closeout, attack the rim ability. The shot's up in the air and the handle's up in the air. But those are 2 things as a 26-year-old we can work with.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Those are things that you have to continue to work on, refine, and then find where he fits in your system. Yep. And I think he is somebody that when you plug him in, defense first, hustle, effort, energy, like, I hate to say it, Ryan, how he plays is kind of what I thought we were getting in Jarris Walker as a rookie.
It is.
Right?
That's what we thought.
I thought we were getting somebody that had defensive versatility, that was going to give you the steals, the blocks, that kind of uber athletic game, and then the shot was going to be a project. Jarris has been the complete opposite. Right. The shot has been incredible, and everything else has sort of been a little suspect trying to... Now, I think Jarris still is a better player than Jalen Slawson. I'm not trying to make that argument, but there's no doubt that Slauson's better on the defensive end. And if Jarris was defending to the level that Slawson had been able to at the end of last year and what we're seeing in Summer League, we wouldn't be having the conversations we're having around Jarris. Frankly, we'd be having more of a conversation of should he supplant Aaron Nesmith in the starting lineup. And we're just not, because he hasn't been able to do the things that we're seeing Slawson do here in Summer League. I don't want to get too far into this because I know for many in our audience, there's a conversation around Braden Smith that has to be had. And obviously, you move off of a guy in Cam Jones. We have a short bench, I would say, in terms of ball handlers. When you're talking about Andrew Nembhard really being your starting shooting guard, I get it. He's a point guard, by essence, but he's the starting two. TJ's the backup guard. You've got Quentin Jackson on the partially guaranteed contract, but there's not a lot of what I would call lead ball handler depth on this roster. You move on from Cam, you draft Braden Smith, you talk about two-way, although that has not been inked yet. And we're going to talk about the two-way contracts here in a little bit. What do you make of Braden through the first two games?
I'll call a spade a spade. I'm not impressed right now. It has not been a great showing from Braden. And particularly in the first game, you saw a lot of loose dribbles, kind of getting pickpocketed. Didn't really find a flow of the game until the second half. Found a little bit more rhythm there. Then you go into the 76ers game, and you look at the stat sheet. I think it was 16 points, 5 assists, maybe 1 turnover on the night. But let's take a step back from that even. Right now, through 2 games, in a Summer League essence where we're giving him a lot of the keys of the ship, he now has 5 field goals made. He has 9 assists and 5 turnovers. That's not really cutting it for me. And I know we hold in Summer League, there's always a little bit of give and take. And you have to understand that in Summer League, some of these guys, he's not playing in the system that necessarily we're going to implement when we get into the regular season. He doesn't quite have the shooters, the roll rimmers. Like, Mass has played well, but it's a different type of...
He missed a lot of shots. Braden set him up yesterday, and Mass missed some shots.
And so I'm glad you'll be able to take it another way. But taking all that into account, I hope that I see a little pop from these guys. And we've watched years of Summer League. I even go back to the Aaron Holiday stats. He missed a lot of shots, but there was a little bit of pop still, even in his game. And we know he's basically turned into a career 11th man. So I'm not setting the bar high with him, but I want more from Braden. Let's start there, because why I want more is I want a little bit more playmaking. He got off the ball really quickly the first game against the Cavaliers. It was one dribble. He saw another man, balls out of his hands. And as a point guard, you have to be able to initiate more. And when our offense has stalled, he has not created enough space for me. I think we know there's going to be issues on the defensive end, but I leave it at that he's gotten a few bailout fouls that have bumped up his stats. He's gotten some nice dishes, but also some of those assists that you mentioned that Mass missed were just, I'm going to make the next easy pass that leads to a 3 and somebody knocks down. So I'm not going to say that we're putting any panic meter on Braden Smith, because he's got a long runway. I think this team showed a little faith, but amongst lower talent, when the physicality's only going to get more, when the size gets only bigger, he has not shown what I hoped.
Ryan, you said something that was this, you've led the horse right to water. The part that worries me the most is the inability to create separation. And he just does not. Listen, you mentioned some of the fouls. He's got a great head fake, and that's really what he's used when he's gotten in trouble and not been able to separate from these defenders. But he's not creating the kind of separation that you would see from a guy like TJ McConnell. Everybody is wanting to make this comparison. I saw it on Twitter yesterday. Braden Smith hit that little floater baseline. I think it was to end the quarter in the third or something like that. And yeah, it's a great shot. It's an impressive shot. It takes a certain amount of athleticism. And I don't want to take anything away from the kid, because I do think he played better on Saturday than he did on Friday. You mentioned the turnovers. He goes from 4 to 1. The points were up. He hit a 3, looked a little bit more comfortable. And I thought some of his attempts at playmaking did not get converted by guys like Mast and others. He had the early lob to Talon Peter. There were flashes, but he is not creating the separation that you need in this league as an undersized guard. And that's just the reality of it. If you're not able to get to your spots, to put pressure on defenses in different ways, he's not going to have the ability to get around guys, to create the kind of playmaking. He's been quoted as saying, I think I was the best playmaker coming out of this draft. And that may be true. And we'll have to see how it looks as the talent gets better around him. I've gotten some comments on Twitter and in the YouTube stuff where people are saying, hey, he's playing with another point guard next to him. I forget the guy's name out of Iowa State. Doesn't matter. Yeah. So I understand that a rising tide lifts all ships. You put Braden Smith with some better guys around him, more knockdown shooters, guys that are going to create space on their own, maybe a true big that can help him with some screens. Because right now, Mast can't be more than 6'7", 6'8". He's not a center. So you put him with a Zubats on the floor, things are going to look different, right? But some of this is just eye test, right? It's getting these guys on the floor next to quote-unquote NBA or sub-NBA talent, and I just don't think he's really popped. He has not looked like the best guard on the floor. You talk about LeBaron Philon Jr. yesterday with the Sixers. Definitely looked like the best guard on the floor.
For sure.
And then, again, I don't want to overblow this because this isn't a Braden Smith, Yuki Kawamura, debate necessarily, although for those guys, they're competing for spots, in the league or maybe even in this organization from a two-way perspective. But I think Yuki creates separation.
Yeah,
at 5'7", he's getting to different spots on the floor, a little bit more decisive. His vision, to me, is better than Braden's. Yeah. Now, I that's, again, just from an early, eye test perspective, but it's a conversation that's going to continue to unfold. I think that this front office is going to give Braden a lot of time and a long leash, and they're right to do it because this guy has excelled at every level against the odds, against the undersized criticism. I don't think it's his size that's really bothering me. Yeah. It's just some of the other things that haven't really jumped off of the screen. So anything else to add or anybody else you want to talk about before we kind of get into this next exercise, if you will?
Right after, before we get to the next exercise, I do want to talk about Yuki because he has been so fun. He electrifies the crowd, and it's hard not to just get into his game a little bit. And the ironic part to me that I think you were kind of leading into is he actually looks more like TJ than Braden does so far. And just in terms of he's got a quicker burst to me than I've seen from Braden. He got that 8-second call where he's pressuring full court. I think he got a steal early in the Sixers game. I think he's had a quicker touch, quicker pass out. I like what you put on the, he has created a little more separation. I will say the one thing, yes, I know the height's a real thing. There was a possession in the Sixers game, 1:54 left in the first quarter. He gets a big screen sent on him. He's 30 feet behind the guard now. He runs in. All he can do is crash the paint, and now all the players crash, and he backs out of the way. There's just such a limitation to his size, but he has been so fun. He deserves at least, I'm not even going to say an NBA spot. I wish he deserved an NBA spot, but God, at 5'7", it's so hard to try to find a way to make that overcome. The reason I say that is I want what he's done offensively to look what Braden's done so far.
Yeah, he was the one that helped lead some of that comeback yesterday. His energy, you saw Obi Toppin celebrating on the sideline when he hit that three. There is more of a TJ McConnell vibe. That is a great call out. He has given us the TJ effect that everybody's looking for Braden to give us. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't want to diminish what Braden did because he had some steals yesterday too. I think it was 2 steals. But, and again, plus minus is not the end all be all. Braden Smith was the worst plus minus yesterday of anybody on the team. Yep. And that's just where those kind of things start to write the story itself. The narrative starts to kind of spell out in front of you. I thought he was better in the second half of both games.
For sure.
He's gotten better and he's looked more comfortable. And I just hope that is something for him that he can build on, because the reality is, Ryan, we said it last year, whether it was Cam Jones, whether it's Braden Smith this year, whether it's a Hail Mary from Yuki Kawamura, we need a guard to step up. Yeah. We need the TJ McConnell replacement. We need a depth piece that can be relied upon because there's going to be injuries. I do not expect TJ McConnell to play 82 games this year. In fact, I wouldn't even want him to because we need him to be healthy going into the postseason, well rested, and not, burn out from a regular season push. So we got to have somebody pop. And so I hope, fans that are listening, I know there's going to be, Boiler Nation's going to be on the defense probably. Make no mistake, I want Braden to be successful. Of course. But I also want to call it how I see it. And so far, it's been okay. And we'll see where it goes over these next couple of games on Monday and Wednesday. Let's shift gears, Ryan, because I think all of this is building towards a bigger conversation around roster construction. So we want to take the back half of this episode to kind of rank our top 5 in terms of two-way slots and how this is all stacking up. Because when you start to put the names out there that are vying for these slots, there's going to be guys that hit the cutting room floor, so to speak, and are not going to be in a Pacers uniform going into next year. And so I'll just sort of set the stage of guys that I think are in consideration, right? And this goes from Kobe Brown, who we got the news on the two-way deal, Jalen Slawson, who we've talked about, Braden Smith, your 2 returning guys, Ethan Thompson, Talon Peter, and then I will throw a Yuki Kawamura and a Rink Mast in there. I don't know how realistic those, options are, or those guys are for these two-way slots, but they've played well enough to be thrown into the conversation. So we're going to go back to front. You'll start with 5, I'll start with 5, and we're going to give our two-way rankings, kind of a power ranking of the guys that we think deserve the two-way slots. And I think it's important that we call out, this is not who we think the Pacers are going to take. This is who Ryan and I say, these are the guys that have stood out. These are the guys that make sense long-term. Where do you want to kick us off in the 5th slot?
Can I give you an honorable mention before we even get to 5? And it's honestly a sad sad honorable mention. And why I say that is because I really have been high on Talon Peter. And I actually thought this would be a chance that he could kind of show some of the skill sets. Because if you remember going into last year, there was a point in time where we started the season against the Thunder, and we thought we were a playoff team. That is what the coaching staff was saying. That is what the front office was saying. We knew we weren't going to have Tyrese, but we were still going to go into the season trying to win games, not be a bottom 3 seed. And Talon Peter was the backup guard going into that season. Now, we had a ton of injuries, and that's why he needed to be, but there was a true sense because we were trying to sign Monte Morris and other guys to fill in that spot. And the coaching staff came to the decision that Talon could hold that position for a while. It didn't work, but I was hoping we would see more. And the second caveat to that is there are guys who do not excel in this type of environment when they need other players to set them up. Ben Shepherd did not. Aaron Nesmith did not. These guys who need other players to kind of show up. And so I actually kind of thought Talon was my sleeper going into Summer League. And I still haven't seen enough. And I know the playmaking is needed around him, and he's a shooter. I actually think he shoots better from the three-point line 3 steps back. He seems to feel more comfortable with the long ball, but I was really hoping that he could find a way, and the shot still isn't there. I think he hit 3 or 4 threes in game 1. I think 1 last night, and I'd almost be okay with a lower shooting percentage if he got the volume back up. And 7 threes in the first game is probably in the right realm, but he needed more than 4 last night against the Sixers. And he just blends in more than I wanted him to. And I still think maybe there's a way for him to vie to become an NBA player, but I'm fearful he's out right now.
Yeah, Ryan, it's hard to argue. He goes 0 for yesterday from deep. There was one in the corner on an inbound that he kind of double clutch, pump fake, hesitation. You just can't have it. If you're going to be the knockdown shooter, you just have to have that green light in your mind. I think about Buddy Hield. He never saw a 3 that he didn't want to take. And that's the mentality that you've got to have. It hasn't been there. So he's your honorable mention. Where are you at? Start us at 5.
At 5, I have Ethan Thompson. And we'll get to why he's a little bit lower because he's played well overseas. And in fact, he's probably been better than players that I'm going to list above him on this. But his skill set to me is a little bit too redundant with a Quentin Jackson. And it seems right now the way we sit, Quentin Jackson will hold that spot, at least temporarily. We'll see, there's always ways to move around that. But Quentin Jackson, to me, is the better defender still. He's a better offensive player. And when we're looking at what we're needing out of these two-way spots, I think Ethan Thompson, again, probably deserves that. He started well at points of last season, has a nice jumper, but he's not quite the playmaker I think we're needing out of that next two-way spot.
Yeah, I've got Ethan on my list. I'm not there yet. So let me react. Let me react to your Taylor Peter, because Peter also fell out of my top 5.
Nice,
And I think everything you said is accurate. And I will say there were some sloppy turnovers.
Yeah.
Some stuff yesterday where he's tried to put the ball on the floor, which is not his game. And, I don't think he is in contention at all. We have too much talent vying for the two-way slot. And so I am putting Yuki Kawamura at 5.
Nice.
He is my 5th. And the reason I say that is, clear need for this team. I've spelled that out. We need a lead ball handler in this stable, in a two-way slot that can potentially vie for an actual roster spot. Do I think Yuki is going to be that guy ultimately? No. I think the 5'7" really does hamper him. You mentioned some of the defensive stuff. It's so hard to overcome. But I think this guy has played his ass off, frankly, for these first 2 games. He has been the most fun player to watch for these first 2 games. And he's played in NBA games, both for Memphis and for Chicago. I don't want to just write this guy off, because I think this is the type of player that this front office and coaching staff absolutely loves. So for me, Yuki Kawamura for the first 2 games, I've got him at 5th in the power rankings.
I think it's a great ranking. It's probably obviously it's a little higher than where I have him. He didn't even make my honorable mentions, but he's been as exciting, as fast, as flashy as anybody in the summer league. And when we're trying to run this eye test around the sloppy basketball, he stood out. So I like where you're at. Let me have you go 4 because
Well, and it's perfect for me to go 4 because that's where I've got Ethan Thompson.
Yeah. Okay.
And for a lot of the same reasons you do, I think Ethan's a hell of a player, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw him come in last year when we first picked him up on the two-way slot, was shooting lights out in those first couple of games. Rick Carlisle gave him some starts early on. And I think he's a pretty talented player, a little bit on the older side for a two-way contract. And I just think he's kind of good at a number of things and not great at any one thing. And I think his ceiling is kind of like Ben Shepherd. We've already got what he could potentially bring. He's got a little bit more off the dribble than a Ben Shepherd does right now, but Ben just gives you so much more on the defensive end that I don't think there is a true roster need for somebody like Ethan Thompson. And we've had that debate with him and Peter over the years, because Peter gives you that, what we thought could be the knockdown shooting element. Thompson's been a fine player, but I think honestly, Ryan, he is an end of the bench guy somewhere in the league, or just a really darn good G League player. And I just don't think there's enough of a need for what he brings inside of this organization right now.
Yeah, it's tough. He's been a better shooter than Talon, is the funny thing, because Talon right now is the knockdown shooter who doesn't hit a lot of shots. Yeah. And until Talon takes that next leap from the outside, I agree with you that I think Ethan should live in the next step. So going on to my 4th, and I will make this again clear, I believe this guy will be on the two-way roster. I just don't have him from what I've seen. And that's Braden Smith at 4. I just think we haven't seen enough, and I really don't believe the eye test. If you take a step back as an honest Pacer fan, take the Indiana native, take the Westfield native out of the question, that he has stood out. And if this had been years past, and let's say we did have a high draft pick, even like a Matherin or Walker, and he was just a guy in the mix, he hasn't done enough for me that have really stood out to make him that player. Now, with that said, whole new team. He's a system guy. He needs playmaking. He needs a little bit more spacing than I think we're probably offering him. But you made the best point that you kind of alluded to on my remarks, where he's not creating any separation himself. And from the guard position, if you are undersized, that is critical key number 1, even beyond vision, even beyond defense. If you cannot create the offense, create the initiation, and that starts with getting some sort of separation with speed or IQ on your side, he hasn't shown enough of me. And in fact, a lot of the shots he's hit, I've alluded that he's only hit 4 field goals, or last second just bailout plays. And until he proves a little bit more, he's not going to rise up my ranks.
I've got him at 3, so I'll just kind of ping pong back here. And Ryan, I agree with everything that you said. And the reality is, he could very well be 4 on this list for me. it's splitting hairs. The reason I'm going 3 is not what he's done through these first 2 games in Summer League. It is more about the pedigree, the winning culture, the leadership, the fact that he is the NCAA's all-time leading assist, man. And I just think that some of those things will start to materialize. There's obviously a lot of pressure on him through these first 2 games and not a lot of continuity. And this is a guy that has thrived in a system in Purdue with continuity, playing with guys like Fletcher Loyer and Trey Kaufman-Renn for multiple years, having that chemistry, knowing where their spots are and finding them. And now you're just throwing him into the fire, so to speak, with a hodgepodge lineup. I mean, Johnny Carpenter goes to Milwaukee, our coach, and we bring in, I think it's Bryce Taylor's the guy's name, so who's coaching this now. So not a lot of continuity with what's been going on in these first couple of games. And so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and look back at the body of work and say, that's enough for me. And I think it will ultimately be enough for this front office to say, we're giving him a 2-way slot. We're going to let him figure things out in the boom. We're going to get him inside of our organization, in the culture, in the system. And let's let some of this body of evidence play out over a longer period of time. And that's why I have him inside of this top 3 getting a 2-way slot.
I think I'd be shocked if he still doesn't get it. He's shown enough for the idea that the Pacers traded Cam Jones, traded some cash. That pick got really weird, but got into the second round, clearly had targeted him. He deserves much more runway. Mine was mostly based off what have I seen today. Yeah. And so now that we're
getting with everything you said,
for sure. And now we get into the top 3, and I have the most jackass way about going around this. So Brad asked me to do my top 5. I gave my honorable mention outside. My third player, who if I was doing this right now, based on what I've seen from Summer League, college, all that, is somebody else. It's not a real player. It's somebody else in the Summer League that we have not seen. I wondered
where the hell you were going.
Yeah. We have not seen them because right now, I don't think anybody on our Summer League team, outside of one player who we'll get to, and we've already talked about today, has actually earned the 2-way spot from the way we've looked. I think Braden, it will be the guy who's earned it. Ethan Thompson, I've already argued that I just don't think there's enough in there. Talon Peter not getting the shot. So I would like this organization to potentially look at who is out there because there are a lot of unsigned guys right now who come out of college and pop, and it's a hodgepodge out there, so it's not an easy one to find. I don't even have a name to throw at you because everybody knows here we don't watch a lot of college basketball who is out there, but my gut reaction would be, and why I say this is, there is a better player out there than Braden Smith today to go get. I just don't know who the fuck it is.
Yeah, and Ryan, it's funny you bring it up because I think back to we've had a lot of 2-way guys over the years. I think about Enrique Freeman, right? Who was on our, a 2-way player for us, goes to Minnesota, I believe is where he landed. So at the end of Summer League, as these 2-way slots get filled around the league, there is going to be collateral damage. It may not even be a college player. It could be a 2-way guy that has been playing like a Jalen Slawson for another team, in the G League, whatever, that doesn't make the cut based on fit, roster need, etc. And we could be in the running for that. And Ryan, I think we should be in the running for that. And I'm going to make an argument right now around maybe how we get there, because I think Braden Smith ultimately is a guy that gets a spot. Okay. We already know, and I want to, we already know one guy's got a spot here. Yeah. And I think we probably both have him at the top. My number 2 is Jalen Slawson. Yep. Okay. But I do want to talk about a scenario here, and I want to get your opinion, because if you are looking to bring somebody else in, if Summer League plays out and things go in the direction that you've outlined, where maybe it's a name that is not on our radar at all right now, and they become available for a 2-way contract, is there a scenario where this front office says, because I think Jalen Slawson has justified a roster spot. We have an open roster spot. We don't really have the cap to sign him because of how the first apron, deal works. And I know you said maybe there's a way we could do it. I'm not 100% sure, but let me kick you this scenario. Do you put Slawson on the big club over a guy in Quentin Jackson?
I love that question, and my answer is no, because of the way the roster is set up right now. And I actually like Slauson's game a little bit more than Quentin Jackson just because of the size. We just know the athleticism. But why I say that is There is a clear need that right now, and you mentioned, if any of our guards have injury risk, and that's between Nembhard, Tyrese, who we got to give minutes off, and TJ, who's on the latter half, those guys need time off. And Quentin Jackson actually fills in a lot of those roles. Yep. He can step into the starting lineup for Nembhard. We've seen that before. He can step in for TJ McConnell. We've seen that before, albeit different skill sets across the board. But I think Quentin Jackson has earned that, and we have more of a current desperate need at that position than we would a Kelly Oubre Jr. I like Slawson a little bit more in the game, and in fact, I have him ahead. I have him at my number 1 spot of how I would do this right now, and I'll get to that a little bit. But I think the way the roster is going right now, Quentin Jackson should feel as secure as he's ever felt with the Pacers, because until we go out and sign another guard that can play make and fill in the 1 and 2 spot, he is kind of the emergency will fill in for any of those guys. And to go to the cap really quickly, from what I understand, and I've now said that a few times on this podcast, and go to the cap gurus, is we cannot sign a vet minimum anymore, which means anybody with 3+ years of experience cannot fit into our roster. So the guys DeRozan, all that are on the market, no longer there. But anybody who has 2 or less years of experience in the NBA, we can fit into the final roster spot, which could be a Jalen Slawson.
Right, I think he's deserving.
Yeah.
I think he has earned, particularly if it fits from a cap perspective. And, oh, by the way, you want to keep an additional two-way guy, whether it's Braden Smith, whether it is a Taylor Peter or an Ethan Thompson or somebody else, to your point. I think he is deserving of a roster spot. And I think his skill set is one that I could see him on the floor in a game just for defensive purposes. And I've said this. I know we signed Kelly Oubre Jr. I get it. We're shoring up our wing defense. But that is a position that you cannot ever have too much of. The switchability, the athleticism, etc.
He's got more strength, too, than an Oubre Jr.
No doubt about it. And so I think that is the guy to keep an eye on. I only had him at 2 on my rankings because Kobe Brown, the deal is already reported that he has a two-way. So I went Slawson 2, I went Kobe Brown 1, and I will, just for the listeners to clarify, I agree with your answer on Quentin Jackson, by the way. I wanted to pose the question because I think it's an interesting debate as we talk about back half of the roster. I love Q on this team. I love what he brings. I love the edge. Yes, he's not a traditional point guard, but all the things that you said, we've seen him be able to fill in and be effective and play defense and score at a high level on certain nights. So I'm all in on keeping Q on this roster. I don't want to, come make it sound like I'm not, but I think it's a worthy debate.
For sure.
It sounds like you went Brown Slawson. Yeah. Is that correct? So let's talk through your final 2 rankings.
So this is, again, not a position of what I think is going to happen, because ironically, I think the most 2 secured right now to get 2 ways are Kobe Brown, who we feel is inked, and I still think Braden might even be higher in this front office view than Slawson. But why I went Slawson over Brown is we did get to see a large sample size of Brown last year, and he overperformed. There's no question. He's a big body, good offensive rebounder, decent on the defensive end. The shot really came around, shot nearly 42% or over 42%, somewhere in that number from deep. But I made this argument on another Pacer player. I'm going to make it about Kobe Brown. If he shot his career average from deep last year, and let's say even he bumped up because he was like 32, 33%. Let's say he shot 35, 36%. I value what Slawson can do way more. And if we're talking about a big game and I'm trying to put somebody into this game who, if we're talking about 2-way and final roster spots, that's really what we're asking is if we get in a real pinch, can this guy come in? And I think Kobe Brown showed plenty. It's not really against Kobe Brown, but if the shot wasn't there, his real high skill set to me is offensive rebounding, and that is not as valuable of a skill that Slawson has brought to this table. And I don't think Kobe Brown would stand out as much in the summer league that Slawson already has shown us between the defensive end, the unreal highlight blocks, plus the ability to close out and attack the rim. And he does have some playmaking ability. And on the Pacers, a team that really the highest of our highs are this ability to make quick reads, find the next player. Slawson has a little bit of that in him. And I almost stand back and look, if Slawson can get to 36% from deep, roughly, which is a high bar for him. In that Cavaliers game, I think 3 of the threes didn't even hit the rim. I mean, I know that I'm already saying it, but Kobe Brown also was a guy who lived on the other side of that. If their 3 balls were even within 4% of each other, I just don't know what the argument of Kobe Brown would be when he's undersized, not as athletic, and not as good defensively that Slawson is.
Yeah, Ryan, my rankings were based on the fact that Kobe Brown's already locked up the deal, right? And so there's certainty there. I like Slawson as a player better than Kobe Brown. I think Kobe Brown's a great two-way guy. And for all the reasons
it was an awesome signing. Yeah. I don't want that to ever be Kobe Brown to get him on a two-way. I thought he had a real argument to be the 14th, 15th man. Yeah. That was a great job by the Pacers.
Yeah. And I think it's good for him too, because he's got some continuity here. He had his most success ever in an NBA uniform with our team. He did not get any run really in Los Angeles. And so I think he's got an opportunity to continue to work, to continue to prove that the shot is real, and maybe, get a little bit more comfort in our system defensively. But make no mistake, I think Slauson's a better prospect. I think he has more potential upside. You talk about the feel for the game. This is a guy that had triple doubles for the Boom. He does read the game well, even in some of those transitions. Yesterday, there was a play where he's leading the ball up, gets it over to Peter. Peter gets it back to him. The first game, he had the little alley-oop finish. There's just some touch, some vision, some, I guess intangible things that you either have it or you don't as an NBA player. You're just not going to see guys pick up that kind of IQ and feel for the game overnight, like they can if they're picking up a scheme or a new system or getting in better conditioning. Those are things that you can train for. Slawson has things that you can't, and it's just inherent, and that's why we're spending, frankly, so much time on this podcast. We've probably said his name 100 times. I hope fans aren't getting sick of it, but he is the guy to me that is the most intriguing. We said that at the start of the show. I agree with how you've got the rankings broken out, and I do think if what you're saying around the cap is true, I think there's a better than 50% chance Slawson will take that 15th roster spot. If we can sign somebody that has that under 3 years experience, I don't know why we wouldn't. You slot in Braden Smith, you slot in Kobe Brown to the two ways. Now, if you want to bring Thompson back, or you want to bring Peter back, or you want to take a look around the league and see if somebody does fall by the wayside that fits our system and what we're trying to do, you give yourself some optionality around that too. So Pacers fans, let us know what you think in terms of your rankings, how this all flushed out, who you think is outperforming in Summer League, who's going to land in these two-way slots. Ryan, anything else before we wrap up this Summer League reaction here for the first 2 games?
LeBron is a loser.
Did you see Rick Bucher's comments?
Who is commenting, oh, now it's leaning this way, it could be this way, or there's insider sources that it's down to 3 teams or 4 teams. Who gives a shit? This is all speculation. He's known for 2 years where he's going to go. This guy's an asshole.
I think Rick Bucher, did you see the comments?
No, sorry.
Rick Bucher made what I think is the best point that has been out there, bar none.
Okay. Yeah.
And what he essentially said, I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have the quote in front of me. He essentially said that think about LeBron's free agencies of the past. Teams were putting together their best packages. They were creating room. They were saying, hey, if you come here, LeBron, here's what we can do. We've got this, star to pair with you, or we'll create this cap room to bring in X, Y, and Z player. That's not what's happening now. Now LeBron is having to go out and pitch. And Rich Paul, we haven't seen Rich Paul in the media ever. And now he's going on ESPN and on different outlets, basically stumping for LeBron, almost trying to sell teams on the LeBron experience. And the reality is nobody wants the circus. I wouldn't touch LeBron and Bronny, by the way, because it sounds like whoever he ends up going to, they're going to make a play for Bronny's now fully guaranteed $2+ million contract. I wouldn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. The guy's ego is absolutely out of control. He still has basketball left in him. Yeah, I know he does.
He can play.
He can play. I'm not going to take anything away from what he does on the court, but This is not a winning basketball player anymore. He hasn't won in years. His last meaningful season was the bubble championship with AD, and that was in 2020?
Yep.
We are so far past winning LeBron James. And again, there's so many asterisks around the ones that he did win, teaming up with different superstars. I'll give him credit with the one, you can say Kyrie carried him or whatever. The Cleveland one is the one that will go down for me as one that I remember, okay, that was heroic. That was incredible, and give credit where credit's due. But teaming up with 2 of the top 7 best players in the league in Miami and getting a couple championships and the bubble and all that, I'm just not there on LeBron. And there's stuff coming out of LA saying that people were never really in on LeBron in LA. They always favored Kobe. You can understand why, because of the mentality, the approach to the game. I wouldn't want LeBron on the Pacers if you paid me. Teams are not lining up trying to create this dream scenario for him to come in. And frankly, I know, and I had somebody on the last, when we put, some feedback, I think it was on Twitter, saying, hey, you're an idiot. We don't want him in the East. He's, beat us every single time. I get that take, but bring it on.
Go to Cleveland. Let's whoop that ass. Come on.
Bring it on. I will take any opportunity at LeBron James that we get, and I hope he ends up in Miami, Cleveland, Philly, wherever. Because
if he goes to Philly, he is the biggest loser of all time.
No doubt. Well, because he's now it's the most obvious ring chase.
Time.
Yeah, it's a ring chase, and we'll see where that all ends up. But Pacers fans, we got 2 more in Summer League. I believe it's Toronto on Monday, Minnesota on Wednesday. So we will be covering it all right here. Do not miss out on our July giveaway. We're going to announce our winner on August 1st. It is pinned at the top of our Twitter profile at Pacers Post Up. We're giving away a pair of Hallie ones for basically reaching 2,000 followers. So thank you guys, those that are following us on Twitter. Go subscribe to us on YouTube, TikTok. We're starting to put some more video content out here, obviously, with some of these Twitter live streams. So Pacers fans, appreciate you guys listening. As always, go Pacers.